In this video, I will be attempting to survive 100 days in Iceland in hardcore Minecraft. This means that I'll have to survive the extreme cold weather, the Icelandic wildlife, and because this is my holiday special, I'll be encountering Iceland's Christmas folklore, all while I explore the wonders of the country and build myself a base for survival. Now that being said, let's get started. I spawned in near a forest, and I soon saw some animals, but I knew I would need food and wool. I'm very sorry, but I have to do this. Anyways, I then went to get some wood, and I crafted wood tools, before then collecting some stone. After making stone tools, I decided it was time to explore a bit. My current objective was to get a bed crafted before nightfall, but as I explored, I found some exposed coal that I went ahead and mined. Now, one of the challenges I will face in this episode is the lack of wildlife in the Icelandic countryside. Forests are sparse too, so something tells me that this is going to be a rather difficult location. So, in preparation, I cooked this mutton, and then continued my search for more wool. As I made my way through the countryside, I saw this tall cliff that I wanted to climb. So I did just that, and the sun began to set before me. As I reached the top, I figured I should go ahead and burrow for the night. I was definitely worried about freezing in this mine, but luckily I didn't. I was actually able to get a lot of mining done. In fact, I found iron, but I didn't have enough wood to make a pickaxe. So I had to wait for the morning, which eventually arrived. With the second day upon me, I now needed two things: a bed and water bottles, as I was going to be thirsty soon. Only, I became distracted by something in the distance. This little farmhouse had sheep, so I quickly sheared them, and then headed right inside, to a fully decorated house. Oh, this is lovely. There's some helpful equipment in here as well, like these snowshoes. I then made my way over to the other building, where I found some more helpful loot and crafted my bed. Now all I needed was water, so I went to see if these water glasses would work the same as the bottles, but unfortunately not. Yeah, in other words, I needed to find sand, so I could smelt some glass. That meant it was time for me to head towards the shore, so I headed in one direction and just kept walking, as I was now unable to sprint. And of course, that's when I saw this thing. Yeah, I built up just in time. After staying the night up here, I awoke the next morning to see that the creature was still here, albeit a little further away. So I carefully made my way down the pillar and quietly walked away. Yeah, I will not be going near that thing next time I see it. Regardless, I made my way across the countryside. And it wasn't long before I spotted the coast. Only this didn't look like your traditional coast. No, see, black beaches are a somewhat common appearance in Iceland due to the island's volcanic activity. But I was more focused on getting my sand, which I did. So I started smelting it. While I waited, I crafted a boat. And then I finally crafted some bottles and drank some water. From here, I got in my boat and started rowing, as my next objective is to find a spot for my base. Only as I rode into deeper waters, I saw something below the icy surface. Yeah, there were lots of orcas. Hello. Hi. As I left the pod, this one decided to follow me for a bit. Either way, I had a base to build, and so as I spotted this mountain in the distance, I decided that it would be the perfect spot to build my base on. The only problem is that I just kept climbing up it. Yeah, this thing seemed to be really tall. And then I ran into a much more serious problem. Yeah, I was on a volcano. Eyjafjallajökull is an example of why Iceland is so unique, as it's actually an ice cap that houses a massive volcano. At over 5,400 feet, or 1,600 meters, this thing is a beast. It's most famous for its 2010 eruption that caused air travel across all of Western Europe to stop for days due to the incredible volume of smoke that filled the air. But thanks to Iceland's sophisticated warning systems, no deaths were caused by this eruption, and now it sits as one of Iceland's most well-known locations. The next day, I swiftly got away from the volcano, and eventually found a much nicer spot for my base. So I headed to find a forest and got right to work. Now while I do that, let me explain what my objective is for the video. See, Iceland is a land of wonders. So my goal for this video is to find 5 of Iceland's most incredible wonders. But I will very much be coming across some Christmas time festivities and folklore along the way, as Iceland celebrates the holidays like no other country. With that being said, I made it back and started clearing the area. I wanted a traditional holiday cabin with an Icelandic influence. It'll make sense as I build it. So on day 5, I started on the outline. I decided to go with dark oak, as that was the wood available to me. I made a rough outline and then started on the floor, which I worked on for the entirety of day 6. Yeah, I cleared this whole area and filled it in with birch planks. And finally, on day 7, I had to go get more wood. This was my last day of base work, as I will be heading out to find my very first wonder tomorrow. And that is the Hauifoss waterfall. After making it home, I started on the front of the house, and decided that I had a pretty good outline going. So the next morning, it was time for me to head to the waterfall. Now since Eyjafjalla is directly south, Hauifoss will be north from here. But my travels wouldn't exactly be easy, as I was very low from fall damage, and I needed to refill my water to heal up. But as I made my way north, I realized that traveling in Iceland is going to be unreal. On day 9, I was down to 2 hearts, thanks to even more fall damage. However, that soon became the least of my concerns. Yeah, this giant cat started charging at me. So I built up, and stayed up here. After a while, I put my wool clothes on to stay warm, and suddenly the cat wasn't as interested in me. So I took my chance and lowered myself down, but I definitely kept my distance, as I had just encountered the Yule cat. The Jólakatorin, or the Yule cat, is a giant black cat that roams the Icelandic countryside during the Christmas season. It's said that if you haven't been gifted clothing before Christmas Eve, it will try and eat you. And on the night of Christmas Eve, it hunts for those who still haven't received their clothing. Yeah, this is one of my favorite creatures I have ever covered on the channel. Big thanks to Steve Locks who made this mob. He did an incredible job. But with that being said, I ended up making my way into a forested area that evening. It was here that I found a pond, which was great as I could now fill up my water bottles. But I still needed food. So the next morning, I collected some kelp and put it in my furnace. After eating the dried kelp, I continued on my way. Nothing notable really happened for the rest of the day. That is, until the sun went down, and I spotted some trolls. Oh. I found some wheat nearby and decided to collect it so I could make bread. But yeah, I saw many large creatures on the hillside that night. I continued through the scenic land the next morning, and that's when I saw this huge cliff with a small river down below. I made my way down the cliff and tried rowing up the river. And that didn't exactly work. But that didn't matter, because just around the corner was a huge waterfall, and I realized that I had arrived at my destination. Hauifoss is one of Iceland's most iconic waterfalls, as right around the corner sits another waterfall, Grani. Hauifoss is certainly the main event though, as the waterfall's a stunning 400 feet, or 120 meters. But the folklore surrounding this waterfall directly ties into our holiday adventure here in Iceland, as it's rumored that an ogre lives here, much like the infamous ogre I met earlier. But we'll talk more about her later. As for now, I had made my way up to this scenic view, and yeah, it was truly something. Regardless, it's time for me to head home now. So I did just that. Only that very same evening, I spotted a cave. Inside the cave was this pot. Oh, and some iron, which was definitely more useful. But when I went to smelt it, I heard something. Okay. Ooh. Ooh. No, you're not allowed in here. You're not allowed in here. No. I don't know if it was aggressive or not, but I wanted to see what it dropped. So I started attacking it, and got it stuck on this dripstone. It dropped some meat, which I reluctantly ate. Yeah, anyways, the next day I headed out of the cave, and eventually made my way into this mountain pass. But apparently, I can't even have a second of peace, because then this happened. Oh, okay. The Yule Cat chased me for a while, but I eventually lost it. And thankfully for me, the rest of my travels were peaceful. I made it home around noon the next day, and I got right to work on outlining the windows and roofline here. Yeah, it was building time again. Next morning, I did some work on the large room. So while I do that, let me reveal the next location, which is the Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon. With that being said, I went to get more wood. Only I had trouble getting home the next day. I could barely see around me. And it certainly didn't help that mobs were now spawning, like this troll. I went to attack it, but it immediately fought back. And it hit hard. Yeah, it was time for me to get home, as this thing was chasing me now through the storm. Soon enough, I found my mountain. But for some reason, I couldn't find my base. And I was now out of food. Yeah, things went from peaceful to deadly here within a day. After searching for most of the afternoon, I finally found some wheat that I collected. And not far behind the wheat was my base. Yeah, I was very happy to see it again. I tried doing some base work, but I just ended up freezing that night. So I continued my work the next morning. And that's when I saw just how much snow had filled my base. Oh, and this creeper blew up part of my base. Yeah, lovely. With no other choice, I made a little farm here so I could hopefully heal up. And I spent most of the evening clearing the snow. Next morning, I started my journey to the Glacier Lagoon. And for reference, I'm right about here on the map. And the lagoon is over here. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a trip. Especially because I still couldn't run. But that problem left when I found some more wheat and made some bread. So I healed up as much as I could. And then I realized that I needed water. Yeah, Iceland is not giving me an easy time. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and take this moment to say thanks to fellow YouTuber Ivar, who is an Icelandic YouTuber that covers all things Iceland. He helped me a ton with the research for this video, and I highly recommend checking out his channel if you want to learn more about Iceland. Go celebrate an Icelandic Christmas with him over on his channel, and leave him a nice comment, as this video would not have been possible without him. As for the rest of day 17, I saw this funny little creature with one eye. Yeah, that's about all that happened. But on day 18, as I went to gather this wheat, I heard something. As it turns out, an Arctic fox was here. Yeah, I knew at this very moment that this would be my companion. So I did the normal routine. I crafted a knife, collected some straw, and then crafted a lead. And finally, the two of us could make our way towards the glacier. As it turns out, that's all we would be doing on day 19. Yeah, Snow and I walked across the rolling landscape, and yes, that is her name. Regardless, we carried on with our travels. Until they were interrupted by a sharp wooden spire sticking into the sky. I cautiously made my way towards the building, and then I saw the banners. Yes, of course it was. But I decided to be smart this time. I went in quickly and destroyed these two spawners. And then this sunbird appeared out of nowhere, and that really confused me. I have no idea what this is or what it does, but hey, I have a structure to loot. But first I had to kill this remaining pillager. Well, make that 2 remaining pillagers. Anyways, inside the base was a ridiculous amount of food. Some of the best loot I've found in a pillager base. But I didn't stop here. No, I started to take the base apart as I wanted the wood. Finally though, the next morning, Snow and I continued on our way. We hiked down into this scenic valley, and as it turns out, there is a large population of reindeer here. Now, reindeers were brought to Iceland in the 18th century, and they can only really be found in the eastern part of the island, which means that I was getting close to the Glacier lagoon. As I looked around the reindeers, I was reminded of an old friend from my Greenland video. Snow and I continued on and found the coast later that day. I put Snow in my boat, but then saw some really strange creatures that evening. Anyways, we rode out into the icy waters, planning to go up the east coast. However, after a good bit of rowing, I spotted something large in the water. And this time, it wasn't an orca. No, it was one of Iceland's resident whales. The minke whale is a much smaller relative of the humpback whale, as these guys can only grow up to about 35 feet or 10 meters. These whales can be found in colder waters all around the world, but Iceland houses a very healthy population of them. If you want to see them while visiting Iceland, it's recommended that you go in the summer, but some of them hang around all year, including during the frigid winters. I swam with them for as long as I could, but when a snowstorm started up, I knew I had to leave, as I didn't want to get hypothermia. That being said, Snow and I headed back for the shore the next morning. After finally reaching it, we followed along it. That is, until I saw this forest. As I mentioned, forests aren't too common in Iceland, so I wanted to get wood while I could. Only that same night, as the mobs began to spawn, I saw this troll. I really wanted to kill it and see what it dropped, but there were just way too many mobs here. So yeah, I gave up, and I got to deal with the consequences of my actions the very next morning. After waking up to that, we got right back to rowing. But it certainly didn't take long for us to see some ice, and by some, I mean a lot, as we had just entered the lagoon. The Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon, one of Iceland's most stunning locations. This incredible glacial lagoon is not only Iceland's deepest lake, but it sits adjacent to another famous location, Diamond Beach, which gets its name from the countless shards and fragments of ice scattered across the sand. Now, the lake itself is actually constantly growing. In fact, according to Play Iceland, it's only been around since the 1930s. And just like the Kongur-Lusawat Glacier in Greenland, this one is melting at such a fast rate due to an increase in the global temperature. But even despite that, it can still get really cold here, so make sure you're well equipped if you ever visit. I found this perfect little lookout area and got an amazing view, before deciding that it was once again time to head home. This trip took a few days though, as guiding snow was a bit difficult. The scenery certainly made up for that, but I also think it's time for me to mention something about Iceland during the winter. See, in real life, Iceland only gets about 4 or 5 hours of daylight in December, so realistically, these days should be a lot shorter, but I didn't want a 20-minute long video, so I had to stick with the normal Minecraft time. That's definitely something to consider though if you plan on traveling there in the winter. Regardless, I made it back to my base on the afternoon of day 30, and from here, I got right to work on the roof. But once again, a lot of snow had piled up on the inside of my base. So the next day, I worked entirely on the roof. Yeah, I didn't want any more snow coming in. I also want a grass roof, so I worked on that for essentially the entire day. I finally finished it on day 32, and then proceeded to work on my interior some. And by the end of the night, it was looking rather nice. So the next day, as I work on my room in the kitchen, let me reveal what my next wonder will be. And that is the Great Geyser. But I ran into a problem with keeping snow out, as I realized I had no windows, and would therefore need a lot of sand. So I decided to wrap things up the next day, and I added some more to the main hall. I also saw a lot of other foxes around, but they wouldn't let me get near them. Anyways, it was time for me to set off. Only before I take my trip to the geyser, I will be making a quick side trip to get more sand, so I can finally have some windows. Therefore, I headed in the direction of the shore. And for some reason, my water was now dirty. Regardless, as I continued towards the shore, I heard a familiar noise. Only this time, I wanted to fight her. Yeah, that was a terrible mistake, seeing as I almost died. I ran away from her as fast as I could, which led me to reach the shore that evening. And it was here that I saw some seals. But I had sand to collect. So the next morning, I did just that. Only that's when it began to storm again. It's storming. Look at that. And then a pod of orcas arrived. Oh. 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 Yeah, I left the area, as I did not want to get caught in the middle of that. But of course, they decided to head my way and attack the seals over here next. I tried to get this one seal away, but ended up making a really stupid mistake instead. Nope. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I got away fast. But after we had some distance between us, I went to check on the orca. We good? We're friends? Ooh. Oh, no, we're not friends. We're not friends. We're not friends. We're not friends. I rode away quickly, but it was chasing me. And these things are fast. With a maximum speed of up to 35 miles an hour, the orca would surely reach me in no time. So I had no choice but to head to the shore. Where I then healed up. Yeah, so the next morning, after that fun, I headed back to my base so I could smelt the glass while I'm on my trip. I got some coal on the way, before then reaching my house that afternoon. And so, finally, on day 38, I began my trip to see the geyser. Now, it's not actually too far from Hauifoss, so this shouldn't be a very long trip. Therefore, I opted to take Snow with me. But she certainly made things difficult in her own way. Alright, give the lead back. Give it. There. Trade. Trade. You love it. Trade. Yeah, there you go. You love onion. Yeah. From there, we simply made our way across the constantly impressive terrain. This scenic travel continued throughout the next day. That is, until a house appeared on that snowy afternoon. It was fully decorated inside, and there was some helpful equipment here in this chest. But this reminded me of a very important segment that I have to cover, as Iceland's holiday season had just begun. Gleðileg jól is how you say Merry Christmas in Icelandic, and that's because jól is the word for the Icelandic Christmas season. Now, we've already seen the Yule Cat, but there are plenty of other traditions that I'll be covering in this episode. However, I wanted to use this segment to point out why Iceland's Christmas is so unique. See, as I mentioned, this time of year is very dark in Iceland, so candles and lights play a big role in their celebration. Also, Yule comes with the arrival of the Yule lads, but we will definitely talk more about them later. Because for now, I do have a wonder to get to. So, Snow and I left the next morning, and by now we had to be nearing it. Only we soon saw the Yule Cat roaming the hills in front of us. We kept our distance and slowly moved past it. Yeah, I didn't know if it would attack Snow or not, but I was not willing to find out. Either way, it soon faded from sight. And on day 41, we reached our destination. Now, you might have heard of the word geyser before, but few know that geyser actually comes from this, the Geyser. This was not only the very first geyser ever discovered in Europe, but this geothermal spring shoots up around 230 feet, or 70 meters. And it's certainly not the only one in the area. But the Great Geyser erupts less frequently today, so if you plan on visiting it, expect to see an eruption, but perhaps not from this one. I walked up near it, which is something you definitely should not do in real life, and as the sun set that evening, I noticed that the whole area took on an entirely new look. Yeah, the sights of this country are truly stunning. With that being said, it's time to do some more travel, as the Yule Festival has begun, and I want to start to decorate my base soon. Either way, the trip back was a bit tough, as the terrain proved to be difficult for Snow. Oh, and we saw the Yule Cat once again. But we returned home nonetheless, and I got right to work on placing glass in the windows. I started on the roof the next day and lined it with concrete powder to give it a grassy look. I then spent the rest of the day collecting mud. I continued my roof work on day 48 and began clearing an area for my balcony. Only that evening, something rather odd happened. Oh. What? What are you? No. Nope. I'm not gonna do that. I had to run down the mountain just to get away from him. But that's because the Yule lads had just arrived. On the 13 nights before Christmas, the Yule lads traditionally come one by one and cause chaos around the towns of Iceland. However, nowadays it's more common to leave shoes in the windows for them to put treats in. But as I continue my stay here in Iceland, I will very much run into a few of the Yule lads. Just like Stuvr, the shortest Yule lad who comes and steals pans in order to eat what's left in them. Yule lads aside, I had some more mud to collect. Yeah, exciting stuff, really. But while I collect mud and work on my base, let's discuss the next location that I will be visiting. And that is the Stulagil Canyon. As for the rest of the day, I just worked on the kitchen floor. However, I woke up the next morning and realized that it was already day 50. So I'll take this time to say a huge thanks to everyone who worked on this video. As always, Nettle did the art. Styx made some lovely houses for the Icelandic towns, and my devs, Steve Locks and Dragongast, did an incredible job with their respective mobs. But I need to give a very special thank you to the Gofidako team, because this was the very first map that I didn't actually make myself. No, the Gofidako team worked tirelessly to recreate Iceland, and they excelled. So a big thanks to my entire team, and I would say happy holidays to all of you, but why do that here when I can just say it in person? Hello everyone, and happy holidays! I couldn't find a Santa hat, so instead I have this wreath. Yeah, I think this looks nice. Anyways, regardless of your religion or your beliefs, I believe that it is important to take the time every year to just step back and be happy with what you have. And this year, I've gained an amazing community through all of you, so I'm very grateful for that, and expect me in the new year. But of course, with all that being said, I'm heading over to Sweden and Denmark in 2 days. So if you don't hear happy holidays from me then, happy holidays, everyone. And happy new year. That's important too. I woke up on day 51 and began my trip to see the canyon. This one was a little ways away, so yeah, I'll be leaving snow at the base this time. But with that, I traveled northeast for the entire day. However, as I made my way across the countryside the next morning, something alarming happened. Everything around me was breaking. Yeah, I knew I was in the middle of an earthquake, and it eventually passed. See, Iceland is an earthquake hotspot. Apparently, they have an average of about 500 earthquakes a week here. But of course, not all of those are necessarily alarming ones. Regardless, I kept walking. That is, until the aftershock hit. Yes, I couldn't even run during this one. As I continued northeast, I knew that this was going to be something that I would have to watch out for. Only, I almost immediately forgot about the earthquakes, as I reached this pond area. And I saw some horses near the pond. Only these were not your average horses. No, they had rather long manes. I knew instantly just what they were. The Icelandic horse is also mistakenly called the Icelandic pony because it's smaller than most horses. But despite its size, they often have huge personalities, as they are known to be very friendly, and their iconic hair is grown out each winter as the Icelandic cold sets in. But they certainly know what they're doing, as they're the only breed of horse here in Iceland. After visiting with the horses, I made my way into an incredibly snowy area that evening. Oh, and I witnessed a mini earthquake. I slowly progressed through the icy landscape the next morning. I was also on the verge of freezing the entire time, but I thought this would be the perfect place to hunt a troll. So naturally, I waited for the sun to set, and I found one pretty quickly, so I went after it, but this guy was fast. I managed to land some really good hits on him, but not before being shot at by strays. Yeah, there were lots of mobs around me. Oh, and there's a giant sentient gingerbread man too. How could I forget? So I just ran. And the next day, I kept on my way. Nothing really happened on day 55, as I simply made my way northeast. However, little did I know, another storm was about to arrive. Yes, once again, I could barely see anything. After a while of walking, I made my way into this ravine. It was a full-on chase, as she followed me right into this ravine. I saw her get stuck in the bottom of the ravine, so I decided to run while I still could. This led me to making my way up the rocky walls, and eventually, I spotted a cave right in front of me. Inside this cave was one of the Yule lads, and given that it's the 8th day, it was likely Skirgamr, the Icelandic yogurt eater. Anyways, there was also this huge pot inside. Oh, and some iron, just like the other cave. Only my fortune soon ran out. I immediately went to run out, only I couldn't escape in time, and she hit me. I left the cave fast, and ran up the side of the rocky cliffs as fast as I could. The rest of that evening, I continued up and didn't look back. But now, let's finally discuss Iceland's wintertime monster. Grýla is an evil ogre that roams the Icelandic countryside during the winter. Legend has it she collects rumors about children misbehaving throughout the year, and then when winter arrives, she hunts for them. She tosses them in a sack and puts them in her giant cauldron to cook. Oh, and she is also the mother of all the Yule lads, and her cave is also shared with the Yule cat. See, it's all coming together now, isn't it? Yes, well that doesn't make her any less dangerous for me. But I'd like to give a huge thanks to Dragon Gast for his incredible work on this mob. The storm continued on through day 57, and I was a bit on edge, as Grýla could genuinely be anywhere. I made my way down this mountainous area and soon spotted another troll, so I decided to go for it. And I didn't even let it get a hit in. No, I skillfully dispatched it before collecting the troll meat it dropped. As the storm raged on, I slowly made my way through the sharp wind and blinding snow, before spotting a town that very evening. Next morning, I woke up and looked around this town, and yes, I absolutely love it here. I decided that I will very much be staying here for the day. And I might have borrowed a few decorations, but look, seeing as it's the season of giving and all that, I happily replaced the lights with my very own torches. Yes, don't they look lovely? Anyways, I soon found this absolutely huge tree. After wandering around it for a bit, I made my way into this fully decorated house. They had a bit too much garland in here, so I helped them with that. Regardless, the sun set on this scenic Icelandic town. As I went to sleep that night, I spotted someone staring into our window. Yes, this is Geyser, the 10th Yule lad, also known as the Window Peeper. You want me to let you in? Maybe I should have done that. Yeah, that was my spot. That's not. Okay, that's fine. Next morning, I knew it was time to leave, as I had a canyon to get to. And so, with that, my travels continued on. There wasn't much I could really do other than just keep going, as I had to at least be nearing the canyon. However, as I made my way into a cliffy area on day 60, I realized that the earthquakes may be more dangerous than I initially thought. Yes, a volcanic eruption of sorts soon followed the shaking, and I knew I had to get out of here. Soon enough, it passed, and I just kept going. But that was definitely concerning. Yet that evening, I was once again distracted, as I saw some truly amazing cliffs. My travels continued through day 61, as I started to question why I hadn't reached the canyon yet. After figuring I must be too far north, I headed south for the rest of the day, and I turned out to be right, as I reached the canyon the very next day. Stardew Canyon. At over 1,600 feet or 500 meters long, this canyon has an interesting local history, as it once housed a lively river that divided settlements on either side of it, so a dam was built, and as a result, the water level fell drastically, leading to this incredible sight of exposed basalt columns. The current is still incredibly strong to this day, so you definitely should not swim in it, or even row in it, as I am currently doing. But again, this is Minecraft, so I can have this luxury. And that it was, as when the sun began to set, the canyon became truly stunning. Next morning, I headed to the coast in order to speed up my travel home. However, speed up might not be the term I would use, as I will actually be going the long way above the island. Let's go and see what the north has to offer. Only first, I have to make it to the coast. Yes, a familiar cat soon came into sight. But while I had it here, I wanted to test something. I went ahead and removed my wool hood, and sure enough, now that I didn't have any clothing, it attacked. It chased me down this hill, but I eventually got away. Anyways, I finally reached the coast the next day, and began my long boat ride north. Even as I set off, the scenery was just stunning. As for the rest of the day, I did see some humpback whales, but nothing too exciting otherwise. In fact, for the next few days, the scenery was very much the main event. But on day 70, I reached a rather notable place. I began to climb up this very steep terrain, so while I do that, let's discuss Iceland's secluded nature reserve. The Hundstrandir Nature Reserve is a large protected area in the northwest of the island. Here you can see otherworldly cliffs and mountains, along with a healthy population of Arctic foxes, as this is the only place in all of Iceland where Arctic foxes are protected from hunting. But do beware, this reserve is rather hard to reach, and is almost entirely disconnected from the modern world, as there is rarely cell service here. It's certainly worth a visit though. I reached the top of this cliff by nightfall, and then set off again to now head home the next day. And after a lot of rowing, I came across this cliff, and with that, I began my trek home across the land. Only this was definitely taking longer than I expected, as the very next day, I found myself at the shore yet again. But I kept heading south, and did a lot of trekking. I might as well mention now that this map is entirely free on my Patreon, although it is for 1.21 Java Edition only. Now as for my travels, well, they didn't end until I finally reached my base on the evening of day 73. There you are. Hello, Snow. It is very good to see you again. Well, Snow, truth be told, I'm about to be busy because I have some Christmas decorations to put on. That I did, as I immediately began placing the tree in the center of the large room. From there, I got to work on placing the lights. Oh, and I also made Snow's room today. Next morning, I built the porch, and finished the flooring of it before then adding some more decorations. But on day 76, I realized that I would need more sand for windows. But that works out just fine, as my next destination is near the coast, and that is the Coeditor Waterfall. As for the rest of the day, I tried my best to make the porch look decent. But as day 77 rolled around, I knew it would be my last day of base work for now. Today, I just collected a lot of green blocks, and then I went up on my roof and applied them. But I didn't finish the roof, as I still needed more blocks. Regardless, the next morning, I got ready to head out. Now, because this one is rather close, I decided that I will definitely be taking Snow with me. However, we headed towards Eyjafjalla, and I didn't realize just how difficult it would be to take Snow up the side of it. Our slow travel soon turned out to be dangerous, as something alarming happened when we reached this part of the volcano. There was an earthquake, only this time, lava was pouring out the side of the rock. I knew I had to get Snow away fast, so I brought her with me, but she had a lot of trouble moving. Finally, the earthquake passed, and I got to see just how big this lava stream was. Only to make matters worse, that afternoon, I spotted Grilla in the distance. I once again tried to get Snow to climb up higher, so we could avoid that path. But she just kept dropping further down into the ravine, so I had no choice. We went down into the ravine where we had just seen Grilla. Luckily for us, we didn't come across her. But we continued through day 80 with caution. Eventually, Snow and I reached this small gap that I had to place a block over. I then tried to get her to cross it, but she fell into the tiny ravine below. Once again, I had to follow her. But guess who was waiting right around the corner? Yeah, I froze right here. Eventually, we lost her. And now we were finally making our way down the mountain. Snow and I reached the coast that very evening. And the next morning, I remembered that I needed more sand, so I started collecting some. Well, that's when I saw a flock of tiny birds. That's right, let's discuss the final animal of this video. The Atlantic puffin is not only an incredibly light bird, but they're also quite small. They measure up to about a foot in length, or about 30 centimeters. But despite their size, they can live to be around 30 years old. And here in Iceland, you can find over 60% of the world's population of Atlantic puffins, as over 8 million of them live here on this island. But the summer's the best time to see them, so if you want to find some on your trip, definitely plan accordingly. Puffins aside, I continued with my sand collecting. After having multiple stacks collected, I actually headed home, as I wanted to smelt it while we searched for the waterfall. Next day, I made my way up and over the trail we had just crossed. And I love traveling with Snow, but traveling without her is about 10 times faster. As despite me spotting Grilla again, I actually made it home this same evening, where I quickly began smelting a ton of glass. But on day 83, before I head back, I want to craft a few items, as I was going to hunt gorilla before heading back to snow. After crafting an axe, I made my way back up the snowy trail. I decided to check each and every ravine. And around midday, I found her. I slowly and carefully inched towards her. I got a good hit in, but then I had to run. Yet, when I went in for another, she almost killed me. Yeah, one more hit like that and I am dead. I quickly ate my golden apple, and this is what gave me the advantage, as I went right in for the kill. Yeah, Grilla wasn't as difficult as I had anticipated. Oh, and she dropped a wooden shovel, which is likely her spoon. Regardless, I'm sure this won't stop her from coming back to Iceland next year. But nonetheless, Snow and I now didn't have to deal with her, and we could travel in peace. Speaking of Snow, I found her that evening. And that means it's time to find this waterfall. We went out via boat and went along the shore to search for it. I noticed that the shoreline was now freezing over as ice was everywhere, but it wasn't until later in the day that I found out I had been going the wrong way. Yeah, to be honest, I'm surprised this doesn't happen to me more often. Anyways, we finally reached the river of the waterfall around midday on day 86. And so that just means that I had to climb up this hill, which I did. And yes, it was right in front of me. Kuvnafoss Waterfall. At almost 100 feet tall, this waterfall is certainly shorter than the Hauifoss, but it has a feature that Hauifoss doesn't. In the summer, you can fully walk behind this waterfall. And of course, that leads to an incredible view. This scenic gem is as modest as it is unique, and you can take a naturally gorgeous hike to get here. I made my way up to this viewpoint, and just like with the other wonders, I waited for the sun to set. I walked back to Snow the next morning, and we started to row home. But it definitely wasn't a quick trip, as we still had a lot of climbing to do. But while we do that, let me go ahead and rate Iceland's difficulty. Iceland challenged me in ways that no other location has. See, while normally the presence of wildlife makes my survival difficult, in Iceland it was the lack of wildlife that almost killed me multiple times. That, plus the intense winter weather, combined with the sharp and cliffy landscape, made my survival here difficult by entirely natural means. Therefore, I will have to award Iceland the very same difficulty rating that I gave Bolivia, a 7.5 out of 10. As I made it home on day 93, I knew I had a lot of work to do before base review, so I promptly got right to it. I finally finished the windows today. Oh, and Snow can now roam freely in the house. I also discovered that my farm had frozen over. Anyways, the next day I focused on my porch and tried to make it look nicer, before then heading to the woods, as I wanted furniture. And upon my return, I made this fireplace. But the next morning, I had a moment of panic when I realized I hadn't entirely childproofed the porch, and Snow had gotten out. I had to craft a new lead, and then I went to get her. And of course, she had the old lead in her mouth. Anyways, besides that, I made a lot of couches and tables today. before then working exclusively on the roof on day 96. I had to collect a lot more green, and I then applied that green to the roof again, but I finally finished it this evening. Next day, I made even more furniture and added it to the main room. I also added some decorative doors, and this trim. Yes, the trim adds a lot. Regardless, I had reached the last day of base work, and I wanted to spend it on my room. I tried to make it look decent with some furniture, but you know what? It's not terrible. Anyways, with that being said, I woke up on day 99 and took one last look around every part of my base before giving it a final score. Starting with the exterior, it's a modern take on the Scandinavian look, and it's not so bad. I like it just fine. But moving on to the interior, this is where it feels homey. The lighting works really well here. Oh, and the various decorations all work together to bring a cabin feel to it. But of course, this is my holiday special. So how are the decorations? Well, to be honest, I think the lights are great. I also really like the garland and tree here from this angle. I just wish I had stolen some presents. But overall, I would give this base an 8 out of 10. Yeah, it has some flaws, but I honestly really like it for some reason. Let me know what your rating is in the comments. But of course, there is still one more day. I woke up on day 100 and walked outside. As I went down this mountain, I saw the familiar Icelandic scenery that I had gotten to know over these past 100 days. See, Iceland may have a Viking influence, much like the rest of Scandinavia, but I challenge you to find scenery elsewhere akin to that of this island. It's as though southern Greenland has clashed with the dramatic volcanoes of Hawaii, and yet there are still locations here that make it more unique than that. Truth be told, Iceland isn't just a gem of Europe, it's a gem of the world, and with its holiday folklore taken into account, there is truly nowhere quite like Iceland. Are you cooking? Is that what you're doing? Yeah, I'm sure it'll taste great. It has been quite a year, hasn't it, Snow? I love listening to zombies as I look at my Christmas tree. What a great first year for the channel. I mean, I've been doing this for much more than 1 year, but it's finally working out, isn't it? I definitely plan on doing this for as long as I can. But with all that being said, it is about that time. We're going to ignore that, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the new year.